Hey, this is Borns, and I picked David Bowie's Scary Monsters as one of the best albums of all time. One of my favorite albums of all time. There he is. And there was his shadow. And I think actually this album cover is a really good representation of the album itself, because the whole album is kind of about almost a battle with your internal self, and almost like a claustrophobic feeling, and it was the first album after his like Berlin trilogy. He was living in Germany for a while. He did it with Tony Visconti, who was a longtime collaborator, did everything from his first 1969 album to all the way to Black Star, which is his last album. Amazing producer, and this album he pretty much wrote a lot of it himself. There wasn't a lot of collaboration. He was the only credited writer in most of the songs, and all of them are just kind of about it's like this very introspective kind of battle with your inner demons. And the first track starts out and it's really abrasive, and he's almost singing kind of like out of tune, and just like it's really primal, and he's just like screaming into the microphone. And there's also this like Japanese translation in the background. It's saying exactly what he's saying, but in Japanese, and it's kind of like this really abrasive feeling that you get listening to it. And then at the very end, that's like the intro, and then the very end he does the same exact song, but he's a lot more like mellow. It's like he's come to terms with himself or something. And he's not like screaming. It's a complete like opposite, like bipolar kind of feeling of what he's saying. And then has Ashes to Ashes on it, which is one of my favorite Bowie songs. And that song is kind of like a continuation of Ground Control to Major Tom, and which is interesting. It starts out with, "Do you remember a guy that's been in such an early song? I heard a rumor from Ground Control. Oh no, don't say it's true." So it's interesting that he's continuing, a character from another earlier record, because it seems like normally his characters are kind of constantly evolving. One of my favorite songs on the record is this song called "Up the Hill Backwards," and it almost has this kind of like lobotomized choir kind of sounding group vocals, and it's a great tune. You definitely hear a progression of just his singing voice. Like if you listen to like one of his first records, his voice he sounds like such a young boy, and the songs are really kind of whimsical in a way. And then you compare that to an album like this, and it's just like you can tell that he's just not even caring about his vocal takes. He's just like, I mean, I'm sure he is, but I really admire an artist that can get to a point of like putting vocals on a record that are just like they're not trying to be in tune. They're just like, just very emotional. So yeah, it was really strange. I was in Australia and I was listening to his new record, and I was really crazy about it, and like since it came out I was just playing it over and over, and I was like sitting in the bathtub, and somebody like texted me about it, and I was listening to the record at the time, Black Star, and I just remember it didn't even seem like real. It didn't really hit me at that moment, because it was so, like, his music was playing, and it was like he was still living, he was still like in that space. And then it wasn't until later that I was hanging out with a friend and we listened to the Black Star album, and I listened to it completely different, you know. It was almost just like a musical eulogy of him for himself, and you could hear, you know, in the lyrics everything that he was going through in his perspective on, you know, one of his last bodies of work. And that was when it really hit me. It was when I heard it reflected in his last album. So yeah.
Hello, you're with Jamie and Ed from One Mid Bicycle Club, and we've chosen Talking Heads' Remain in Light as one of our favourite albums.
Hi, I'm Ian.
I'm Lauren.
I'm Martin.
And we are the band Churches, and we are here to talk about this album and why we love it so much.